So whether we're engaged in full-time retreat on Green Tara, or we're doing partial retreat while we're offering service, or whether we're doing one session a day through Retreat from Afar, there's one very important question that we need to continue asking ourselves. What is my motivation for doing this retreat? And what is my motivation for doing this session? I think this is a real challenge for us as Westerners practicing Tibetan Buddhism, because we've all heard many, many teachings from many, many teachers. We've read many, many books, watched many, many videos. We know all the right answers, right? We know we're supposed to have an altruistic bodhicitta motivation for everything that we do, especially retreat. After all, bodhicitta is the very essence of the Mahayana scriptures, and a quality that bodhisattvas hold very dear to their hearts. We also know that we're aiming for full and complete awakening to benefit others. However, if we neglect to give bodhicitta the required amount of attention, can any of our practices truly be Mahayana in scope? Bodhicitta is a big aspiration. It's not some vague garden variety kind of altruism. Rather, it's a very precise main mind with two aspirations, right? The aspiration for full awakening and for the benefit of all sentient beings. So it's an incredible aspiration, but I wonder if we've become too proud to have lesser goals. For example, how serious is our reflection on the sufferings of cyclic existence and our own determination to be free from samsara, let alone to free every single sentient being without exception? And how serious is our concern for future lives? How often are we thinking about future lives instead of this one? Because these are the underpinnings of our bodhicitta. So we need to honestly really check up. Developing bodhicitta is based on equanimity. That's a precursor, that's a preliminary. So to be honest about my bodhicitta motivation, I have to examine the quality of my equanimity that I've cultivated so far. How equanimous is my mind? Okay, so yes, hooray, there's been a little change since I've been practicing Buddhism all these years. But how committed, I have to ask myself, how committed am I to dropping attachment and aversion towards each person I meet throughout the day? Of course, anger and attachment will naturally rise. That's just their habit. So that's a given. That's something that we all work with. But how quickly do I catch them, and how quickly do I recover after they arise? Can I afford to let anger and attachment influence any moment of mind or any actions that I do, even for a briefest moment? Do I immediately apply antidotes as if there was a snake in my lap or my hair was on fire? And how quickly can I laugh at myself for going to war in my mind over small injuries? Like when someone takes my socks from the laundry, or someone speaks harshly, or someone's opened a second carton of soy milk in the refrigerator because they didn't want to wash the first one that was in there. The mind can so easily go to war. So when I think of others, how often do I remember that every living being is just like me, wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, that we're all exactly the same in that regard? And how do I keep that front and center of my very being, no matter what they're saying, no matter what they're doing? And from my own point of view, how certain am I that I've had every kind of relationship with living beings? That they've all been dear friends, strangers, enemies, countless times, countless times. How willing am I to accept that a constancy of friend and foe is a quality that I will never find? Can I remain honest while moving through the day, seeing others as friends, as part of my family, as His Holiness says, seeing no stranger in anyone that I meet? So when I reflect on this, I have to ask, is it appropriate to continue following the habitual prejudices of attachment and aversion in my mind? And equanimity is just the preliminary meditation to generating bodhicitta. So I still have a lot of work to do there. So seeing how far I have to go yet in my practice of equanimity, then I have to be honest and realistic about how sincere and deep my bodhicitta motivation is. for my practice. And with this in mind, the short-term goals I seek will be more realistic too, I think. So we may assume that bodhicitta is our motivation for retreat, and we may assume that it's our motivation for each session, but is it really? We have to look closely and check carefully our motivations, because they're probably mixed motivations for most of us. We need to check because that's the only way that we'll get the results from our practice and that our practice will truly evolve. It's easy to say that our motivation is bodhicitta, but if we're not 100% committed to that motivation, then we can easily lose track. We can become aimless in our practice. In fact, that's a clue. And then there's no way to get the outcome from the meditation that we're expecting. So when we examine closely, we might be surprised to find just how much of our motivation is hijacked or subverted by our secret strivings for the good things of this life. A little more pleasure, a little more comfort, good reputation as a practitioner, with a little praise thrown in for all our good efforts. Or perhaps we find our motivation is hijacked more often by anxiety about any number of things: our health, our wealth, our reputation and status, our personal spiritual practice or in progress. So in asking this, I don't mean to suggest that we should never be motivated to seek happiness and prevent suffering in this life. We all want to be happy, to live a happy, healthy life. But the point is not to work only for the happiness of this life. And to do that, we have to be on top of our motivations. Because if these worldly concerns are our primary focus, then even if we engage in meditation, religious practice, or virtuous actions, we will really be thinking of our unconscious temporary goals. May nothing go wrong for me today. May I get exactly what I want and have everything go my way. May I not experience any problems or difficulties today. Don't you find that's often underneath the surface of our motivation? And with that kind of unconscious underlying motivation, then the virtuous actions we attempt to do will not have much meaning, nor will they have the power to bring the results that we're aiming for. I remember being very moved by the honesty of Lama Zopa Rinpoche in his book, The Door to Satisfaction, where he talks about how shocked he was at the age of 28 when he discovered that all of his Dharma practice up to that point had not been pure Dharma. He describes this in the book very clearly. So, have we had that discovery yet? The border between a Dharma practice and a worldly activity depends on why we're doing it. If it's only for a temporary worldly goal, then it becomes just an ordinary activity. Our Dharma practice needs to be at least directed towards a good rebirth, right? And hopefully towards full liberation or complete enlightenment. Certainly beyond just seeking the temporary pleasure and enjoyment of this life. So we need to check up. We need to be 100% honest. We need to start where we are. And remember that we're not yet bodhisattvas. The more we understand our actual motivation, not just our mouth motivation, but our actual motivation, the better chance we have to correct it and then to adjust it to get the goals that we want. So this may seem self-evident to you. You may be thinking, oh, yes, I know. However, assuming that we have a bodhicitta motivation all the time might just be another arrogant, self-serving trip. So how do we check our motivation? I've been thinking about this a lot this retreat. I think first we take time to really cultivate a good motivation in each session, to make it genuine, to connect with it in our heart. And there we generate long-term aspirations of bodhicitta, but also be very realistic about short-term goals, increasing our understanding about precious human rebirth and death and impermanence, karma, refuge, four immeasurables. And then we need to be attentive, really attentive. And we can watch our body to see if there's any agitation going on. Maybe that's a clue for us that something's not quite right. We haven't connected with our motivation. Or we can watch our thoughts while we're meditating. What's that background conversation happening? What's it saying to us? We can notice if there's any competitive, comparing thoughts arising. These might be quick, sneaky little thoughts just below our gross awareness, so they're difficult to catch. We have to really pay attention. We can notice if there's any jealousy arising towards other meditators. Watch to see if we're content just to create causes. Notice if you feel disappointment if you don't get the immediate outcome you're hoping for. A little blissful feeling. Watch for feeling aimless or directionless in your session or retreat, like you're losing energy, which probably means that we've lost track or lost our connection with our motivation. And maybe you have other things that you do to check your motivation. I'd be interested to know them. Another good question to ask in retreat is, what outcome am I expecting as a result of this practice? Is that outcome in proportion to the time and energy that I'm putting into it? If we owned a business and we went to work each day, but after many years, we never checked to see, how's my business doing? Am I being profitable? We'd probably go out of business pretty early. So think for a moment, how do we check the profit of our meditation practice? We have to be careful here because, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama advises, we really should be checking our progress in terms of 5 and 10-year slots of time. But we don't want to be pulling up the carrot sprouts at the end of every session to see if we've made any progress. So how is it that we gauge our progress? One thing we can check is this, or a few things. Is my mind becoming more subdued, kinder, open, receptive? Am I able to catch the afflictions more quickly? Am I more accepting and compassionate with my own mistakes? Does my meditation permeate the actions I do between my sessions? Or do my actions have little reflection of the meditations I've been doing? So keep in mind that all of our Lamrim study and meditation supports our larger Dharma aspirations and goals. Many deity practices include a specific place to do a Lamrim practice, like our green tar practice, and then some sadhanas don't, but we can always add a Lamrim practice. Take time to do a Lamrim meditation. So we can also read about the Lamrim topic in our meditation in between sessions to refresh our understanding, to deepen our understanding. We can stick with one Lamrim topic for a while until there's a noticeable shift in our understanding, in our insight. We can make sure to take time to come to a conclusion at the end of our Lamrim meditation. This is something His Holiness has said on several occasions, even just for half a minute or a minute. Just take time to dwell as if you were in single-pointed meditation on the conclusion to bring that meditation to a close. And then in the post-meditation session, reinforce our understanding by letting the world around us teach us about that topic, looking for examples of that topic in our own life. And then notice what effect our Lamrim practice is having on our thoughts, on our speech, on our actions and motivations. So we've heard a lot in the Buddhist literature and in teachings how important the bookends are of motivation and dedication, and especially motivation. So even though we're partway into our retreat, I hope that we can take time to really check up to see what is my motivation for doing this retreat, this session.